video from my good friends at Inhala.com. Let's talk about serious business. Sleep apnea. Whether you've been diagnosed with it or afraid you have it, I've got the solution. Inhala is here to give you your life back by giving you your breath back. They make it easy to get help for sleep apnea because living without restful sleep is simply no way to live. Inhala gives you a custom-fitted oral appliance that opens your airway so you naturally breathe the way nature intended. The best part is they offer virtual consultations and in-home sleep testing. No overnight stays at a sleep center. Plus, Inhala has all the doctors that you'll need. Appointments are virtual, and it's all covered by your private medical insurance. Inhala does it all, from diagnosis to the delivery. Don't suffer from another sleepless night or daytime fatigue. Visit Inhala.com or call 844-INHALA-1. That's 844-INHALA and the number 1. Call now, 844-INHALA-1. That's 844-INHALA-1.
It's More Money with leading economist Steve Moore.
Stephen Moore is with us, economist.
With more than 30 years experience as an economist and as a leading thinker of government on business, showing deep understanding of the shifts in the global economy. He's leading economist Steve Moore with More Money on Talk Radio 77 WABC. Now, here's your host, Steve Moore.
Welcome, folks. This is the More Money Show. We are live and in color. I am your host, Stephen Moore. It is always a great, great thrill to be able to speak to you every 2 hours from 1 to 3 p.m. on Saturday afternoon. We have affiliates throughout the country, so thanks so much for joining. If you're a regular listener, I am very honored to be able to talk to you every Saturday afternoon. If you're new to the show, we talk about politics, we talk about the economy, we talk about finance, and we are live. We are in color. There is no, this is not canned. It is not, if you were to turn to just about any other station, what you're going to hear is a boring canned, ad. A long 30-minute ad and so on. No, we are live. We will be taking your calls today on the More Money Hotline, 1-800-848-9222. My producer in New York is Calvin, and here in our office studio, we have Tim Desher, who are handling the operation. So thanks to both of you. I am so fat. I got so fat this weekend. All I've been doing is eating for the last 3 days. And I guess that's what Thanksgiving is about. But my gosh, I just feel like I've gained about 5 pounds. So I'm going to have to hit the gymnasium as soon as this show is over and work off some of those lbs. I hope you all had a wonderful Thanksgiving. It really, truly is it's between Christmas, 4th of July, and Thanksgiving as my favorite holidays of the year. We are now officially in Christmas season. I'm going to be taking your calls. We're going to extend what we've done for the last 2 weeks because we've had so many callers call in and talk about Doge and what Elon Musk and what Vivek Ramaswamy should be doing in terms of cutting spending. What are your ideas? And I've got 5 pages of notes that I've been keeping over the last 2 weeks of spectacular ideas by you, my listeners, that I have been passing on to Vivek Ramaswamy and the folks who are running Doge because they are looking for ideas. And there's no shortage of ways we can save because we have to save $2 trillion. That's how much we're running a deficit right now, $2 trillion. Now, we may not be able to do that in 1 year, but certainly over the next few years, I think there's no reason we can't cut hundreds of billions of dollars of waste from this incredibly obese budget we have in Washington. And I know you probably all agree with me on that. The only person in America who doesn't seem to agree that there's any waste in government is Elizabeth Warren, the senator from Massachusetts, who says, no, let's not get rid of the waste. Let's just tax rich people. By the way, the good article in the Wall Street Journal, which I was just reading this morning, and I happen to have it right in front of me. And if you are a regular reader of the Wall Street Journal and you get the app, go to the article called What the Top 1% Really Pays the IRS. And what they show, and I've mentioned this statistic before, but I want to mention it to you again. The top 1% of Americans pay almost half of the income tax. That is 1 out of 100 Americans pay what the exact number, let me see here, 46%. 46% of income tax are paid by 1 out of 100 Americans. The rich are paying a lot of tax. Now, there are some rich people who get away with sheltering their income and so on. And if they're illegally sheltering their income, we should go after those people. But the idea that the rich aren't paying any taxes is a bald-faced lie, and the left knows it's a lie, but they keep saying that. And Elizabeth Warren says, "Don't worry about all the waste and inefficiency and flab and the fraud in our government. Let's just tax people more." That's why they wanted to hire something like 10, 20, 30,000 more IRS agents, and I hope that Trump fires those people, because we don't need more IRS agents. We just need a more sane tax system that is understandable. I've had my friend Steve Forbes on the show many, many times, and Steve has it exactly right. Simplify the tax system, keep it so easy that you can fill it out on a postcard, and make it the rates low so that there are not incentives for people to cheat. And we will probably get more revenue that way than with our tax code that's thousands of pages long. Nobody understands it. Even the tax accountants don't understand it. Even the IRS people say, we don't understand these rules. We don't understand these laws. So it is out of control. And that is one area where I think we can make substantial cuts in the budget. We don't need to have 80,000 IRS snoops looking at every financial transaction we make. I'm very much a libertarian. I don't want the government looking over my shoulder all the time. I believe that government governs least, governs best, as the old saying goes, and that's what we need to get back to. So any help that we can give to Vivek Ramaswamy and to Elon Musk, we should give it. He's asking for ideas. And you know what? The government employees are the ones who actually know where the flab is. They know where the waste is. So we should probably be enlisting government employees. And my idea is, if you're a government employee and you come up with an idea about how you could save, say, $1 million, we should give a bonus to those people, right, Tim? I mean, we should give bonuses to people who come forward and say, hey, I'm running this agency. You're giving us $100 million a year. We could do it for $50 million. So there are so many ways that we could cut the size of government. My attitude is not too distant from where most Americans are. I was just looking at a poll that most Americans say 30 to 35 cents of every dollar that is spent is wasted. And I think that's probably about right. 35. I'd be more on the 35 cent. I'd go up to about 35 or 40 cents out of every dollar. So that means we can hunt this waste down. We can get rid of it. We can provide the essential services that we want for government. So I want to take your ideas again. We've probably taken over the last couple of weeks 25 callers. I think most people had really good ideas. If you have ideas of what we could do to reduce our spending and reduce the fraud, I would love to hear it. Now, I'm going to give you my idea. If you're not getting our hotline every day, this is the Unleash Prosperity Hotline. We outlined this in the hotline the other day. Why not have the world's largest ever garage sale? We could do it right on the Washington Monument grounds, and then we could do it in every city in America. There's federal offices everywhere. You go out in Montana, they got federal offices out there. You could do Dubuque, Iowa. You could do it in New York City. You just have massive amounts of things that we sell off, furniture, land, typewriters. I think they're still using typewriters in the government. All of these kinds of assets that they don't need, we could sell them off, make money. And then we could use that money to retire some of our national debt. But I think we could easily raise billions of dollars with a massive sale of assets that are not being used. How about selling off some of these federal government office buildings? I mean, most of you listen to this show have been to Washington, D.C. I know we have a lot of people in the Washington, D.C. area that listen to this show. We don't need all these massive buildings owned by the federal government. If you walk into the halls of Congress, most of them are empty. There's nobody working in them. So let's fire those people who aren't showing up. And Vivek and Elon Musk have said, I want to do that. If these people aren't showing up, they're going to get a pink slip, just as would happen in the private sector. And then sell the buildings. Sell them. What about the land? Half of the land west of the Mississippi River in the United States, it's roughly half, not quite half, maybe closer to 40%, is owned by the government. Think of how valuable that land would be and how much better the usage could be because the government's the worst custodian of land ever. They're the ones who allow the forest fires to wreck and burn down millions of acres of forest land. That's just craziness. That would never happen if that land were owned by the private sector. So those are some of the ideas that I want to talk to you this afternoon about. The other thing, just to have fun, because we are now, I guess, officially in the Christmas season, because I guess the Christmas season starts on midnight on Thanksgiving Eve. I mean, the night of Thanksgiving, and then you have Black Friday, which was yesterday. So we're now in the Christmas season, and so when I turn on the radio when I'm driving my car, I listen to the music stations often when I'm not listening to WABC, and the stations now many of the stations have just 24 hours a day Christmas carols. And, I love a lot of the old Christmas carols, Hark the Herald and blah, 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 Let It Snow, Let It Snow. I love them. But some of the songs I just cannot stand. And so I'm going to ask you all, here's my quiz question for the day. So when you call in, let me know, what is your least favorite Christmas song? And I'm going to tell you what mine is a little bit later in the show, but I want to hear from you all first. Of all the songs, and most of the songs are fantastic. I love Christmas carols, but there's some I just cringe when I hear them. So when you call in to tell me your ideas of how to cut the government spending, I also want your one idea of the Christmas carol that should be banned, because it's just so bad. And I'm going to tell you in a little while what my choice is. One quick thing before we go to our first break, and we have a great show lined up. We have some fantastic guests coming on, as always. I have noticed, and I wonder if you have noticed this too, folks, that people just have a new bounce in their step since the election. And there is this sense people just seem happier now, and they seem more confident. They seem more optimistic about the future. And this is not just impressionistic. If you look at what's happened to the stock market, the day after the election, when Trump won, was one of the biggest days ever in the history of the Dow Jones. It went up 1,500 points in less than 24 hours, because we've been waiting for a president who loves America, who loves American businesses, who will not try to torture and strangle our businesses, but make them successful and make them profitable and make them the most efficient companies in the world. That's what makes America great. And Trump is the guy who's going to look, and I'm not here to sing all the accolades of Donald Trump. There are some things he does I don't agree with. I'm not a, always Trumper. I'm certainly not a never Trumper. I'm a guy who thinks most of the things he's talking about are excellent for the economy. But even here's the most amazing thing. Even some of my Democratic friends, and I do have a lot of Democratic friends, are saying, well, maybe let's give Trump a chance. I mean, these are people 4 years ago, he's the worst president. We can't stand Donald Trump. And now they're starting to say, hey, there's something about what this guy is talking about that makes a lot of sense. And so if you are a Democrat, please call in. I'd like to hear from my Democratic listeners. What do you think of Trump? Are you willing to give him a chance? He was president 4 years ago. I think on balance, he did a pretty good job. I think he did a really good job when it came to the economy. Are you willing as a Democrat to give this guy a shot? I'd love to hear from Democratic callers. My online number, the hotline number is 1-800-848-9222. We'll be taking a lot of your calls in just a few minutes, but I'm going to start with Judy Shelton, who's a financial expert. She knows more about the monetary system than anyone. And we'll be right back with Judy Shelton in just 60 seconds. This is the More Money Show on WABC.
This is More Money with economist Steve Moore. Now, Steve Moore.
Welcome back, folks. This is the More Money Show on WABC. I am thrilled to be with you every Saturday afternoon from 1 to 3. Thanks so much for listening in. By the way, I know that it's gotten really, really cold in the Northeast, and I know you've had a lot of snow, but in most places on the Eastern Seaboard, it is sunny today. It's cold. It's very chilly, but at least you've got bright sunshine. So great day to get out. Bundle up when you go out, but when you've got a blue sky and a lot of fresh air, it is wonderful to be out of doors. But wait till the show is over before you do that. Okay, my first guest today is a longtime friend, Judy Shelton. You all know Judy Shelton from Fox News. You know her from the Wall Street Journal. She is one of the primary monetary experts in this country. She should be the next Federal Reserve chairman. I love Judy. And her latest book, Judy, you have two books out now. You have Good as Gold, and then you wrote, I guess earlier you wrote the book called Money Meltdown, but Good as Gold is the new book, right, Judy?
Yes, that's the new book, Steve. Thanks.
Well, congratulations on that. So let's just start with the big picture, okay? How do we make the dollar good as gold?
Well, I actually think that it requires more than just having a Federal Reserve chairman stand up at every press conference and
Right.
say price stability is a responsibility of the Federal Reserve.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm suggesting in Good as Gold, in contrary to the idea people easily dismiss you, oh, you're a gold bug, not realistic, we can't go on the gold standard. What I'm saying as an entree to reevaluating the need for sound money, just as we're evaluating the need for sound finances and doing
Right.
something about it in terms of the federal budget. We have 261 million ounces of gold that has been sitting there, owned by the Treasury, for 53 years. And
By the way, Judy, is that gold that's in Fort Knox? Where is it?
It's in Fort Knox. Some of it's in the basement of the New York Fed, but that is owned by the Treasury, and we carry it on the books of both the Fed and the U.S. Treasury as being worth $11 billion. Because when we quit putting a price on gold, trying to catch up with the old Bretton Woods
Right.
system, which was set up at $35, and then Volcker said, we're just going to reform it. It's got to be higher than that. Because of inflation that we've had from overspending, we're going to have to make it worth $39 or $40 or $42. They finally gave up at $42, and ever since they've valued it at $42 an ounce. So now it's worth, say, $700 billion. I'm saying don't sell it. That's still the family jewels, but we have a family emergency. And let's have a 50-year U.S. Treasury bond. This would be so perfect. I'll call them Trump Treasury bonds. Have them issued on July 4th, 2026, that 250th anniversary of our founding, to mature in 50 years. Have them be backed. Use that gold as collateral and let them be redeemable in gold at the option of the bondholder. This becomes a barometer of how the Fed is doing on that promise to deliver stable prices. People will be able to compare the return on these Treasury trust bonds, I called them earlier, but they can be Trump Treasury bonds because it fits in with the new golden age. It's saying we are going to make the dollar as good as gold.
So, Judy, let me make sure I understand what you're saying, because this seems to make a lot of sense to me, but I want to make sure I understand what you're saying. So I could buy under your plan, the Judy Shelton plan, I could buy a gold-backed Treasury security. Is that a good way to put it? And that so if the price of gold goes up, which means that the monetary system is too loose because we want gold to be stable in price, then I would get in my security, I would get the increase, the value of my security would rise as the price of gold rises. Is that what you're saying?
Well, yes. What I'm saying is that's the easiest way to sort of imagine the general framework for it is, what would you rather have today, $2,700 or an ounce of gold? And you might say, well, I'm sort of indifferent. I mean, let's say that's
because that's the price that it's selling at now, right? $2,700.
Yes, but what would it be worth to you? How much would you pay for this U.S. Treasury bond, where 50 years from now you have the choice between $2,700, the face value at maturity, or the ounce of gold? And it's almost laughable, because people would say, well, of course, the gold is going to be worth a lot more than $2,700 because the Fed locks in inflation. That's even their goal, to devalue the dollar. And it's almost an exact comparison to the way a Treasury inflation-protected security works, a TIPS bond today, where people are saying, sure, I will make a loan to the government, but I don't want to lose purchasing power and sort of have been a dummy, I want to be reimbursed with a cost of living allowance to make up for the change in the CPI. Instead of the CPI, these are people saying, I want to be kept even and stable in terms of gold, which is kind of a surrogate for all commodities and even for the real economy.
Yes. So, but you're not saying that if I bought one of these bonds that I'd be paid back. They wouldn't deliver gold bullion to my door. I would just get the increase in the value of the gold. Is that, in other words, I wouldn't actually take possession of gold, would I, under this?
You could. I think it should be literally the reason I would make the government, I'm amazed how many people say, well, first, I don't even believe we have it. I think the government's already blown it. So you do an audit and you warehouse this. You specifically use it as the collateral. The point being, if people literally wanted to turn in their bond and say, give me my ounce, you have it. They could do that. They could instantly say, I'll take it in cash. But what you don't want is to have the government be able to just pay you more money to match it. That's the problem. I think it has to truly be backed up literally in those gold holdings we have.
Now, this would also incentivize the Fed, the Federal Reserve Board, to stabilize the money, the money, because if they don't do it, then they're going to drive up the price of gold, which has happened, hugely since 1980. I mean, I remember when gold was $35 an ounce, and now it's $2,800 an ounce. So this would incentivize our monetary authority, called the Federal Reserve Board, to hold prices constant.
This shines a light on the recklessness of both fiscal and monetary policy. And I must admit, the idea goes back to 1981. Alan Greenspan had proposed this in a Wall Street Journal op-ed. President Reagan really liked it. He had said the first thing he was going to do is use some kind of gold backing for the dollar to make it the most trustworthy currency in the world. Right. It's combining those two ideas that what Greenspan said is this will shine a light on fiscal deficit spending, and this will be a way for the Fed to monitor its own performance in delivering sound money against what was traditionally the U.S. definition of sound money. So I think it's
Judy,
very valid in that sense.
Judy, I wanted to switch gears for a few minutes and go into this little spat that's been going on between Donald J. Trump, the president-elect, and Jerome Powell, who is the chairman of the Federal Reserve Board. And Trump is basically saying that he has the authority to fire Jerome Powell, or at least demote him from being chairman of the Federal Reserve Board and putting in someone in his place. And Jerome Powell is saying, sorry, Mr. President, you can't do that. I'm not leaving. And I don't know if the courts have ever really decided this. I might have to go up to the Supreme Court about whether the president has the authority to fire the Fed chairman. I believe the president should have. I'm not a lawyer, but it seems to me if the Fed chairman isn't responsible and responsive to the president, then how do you get rid of the guy if he's doing a terrible job? And frankly, I don't think Jerome Powell has done such a good job. I mean, he's the one who let inflation go up to above 9%. Remember what happened in 2018, where he almost drove the economy into recession. So what do you think about this? Do you think the president should have or does have the authority to remove the Federal Reserve Board chairman?
Steve, I've seen arguments that get into the legalese of it for both sides. There is a clause apparently that says he could be fired for cause. Now, would you fire someone who pledges to deliver stable prices and end up with that more than 9% inflation? Yeah. I mean, that has imposed a real burden on the American people. But I think what President Trump also said is, if I don't like what he's doing. Well, right now, if the Fed has changed its model, and instead of punishing the economy with restrictive interest rates, trying to suppress demand, if they've now changed after that bonus 50 basis point cut in September and followed up with another 25 basis point cut, maybe they truly have changed to wanting to recalibrate. And that could be closer to a supply side approach on the part of the Fed that would dovetail with the incoming Trump administration. Because now, if you're going to have lower taxes, less regulation, you're going to increase supply. And that's where I've always thought that's the way you fight inflation, not by curtailing demand. You try to increase supply. And, and if you have a lower cost of capital, now you're letting the private sector be empowered. That's how you expand investment in plant and equipment and hire people. It's not low unemployment and high growth that causes the inflation. That's a solution for high inflation. More supply.
Yeah, it seems like there are a lot of people at the Federal Reserve Bank that don't understand that. And by the way, there's a reason. I'm talking to Judy Shelton, by the way. Judy's new book is called Good as Gold. She's one of the premier thinkers on monetary policy. She's my choice to be the next Federal Reserve Board chairman, whether it's going to be soon or whether it's going to be in 18 months when Jerome Powell's term is up. But I've got to tell you, I'm looking at these numbers right now. I like to look at commodity prices. I know you do. They've been ticking up since we've had this 75 basis point reduction in interest rates. And Judy, my opinion is, and I'd like to get your opinion because yours matters more than mine does, but as I look at these numbers, I do not believe we have won the fight against inflation.
I do not believe we have won the fight against inflation, but we also have not put Doge to work.
Right.
A lot of the increase in prices is due to the demand pressures that are fueled by the deficit spending. So that's where we need to start. I mean, the Fed enabled all that, but the Fed then coerces banks not to let money get into the real economy by paying them this high interest rate. And all that does is give more power to government because they'll pay whatever rate they have to. But for real people in a real economy, access to capital is determined in large part by what it costs you to borrow. And so I don't think that when the Fed is pursuing restrictive rates to fight inflation, I think what they're really doing is just adding to the costs of doing business. Now people have to factor in a higher cost of borrowing. That goes to the bottom line. And at some point, it's fueling the inflation. So that's why we need to change the mindset.
We only got about 90 seconds left. I'm talking to Judy Shelton, who's the monetary authority par excellence. So I want to ask you one last question. I don't know if you saw this piece in the Wall Street Journal. I think it ran Thursday or Friday by a kind of prominent economist who writes frequently for the Journal. And this economist said that the tariffs would cause inflation. And then, Judy, that may or may not be the case, because tariffs are a tax. But then he said, but also extending the Trump tax cuts will cause inflation. So on the one hand, he's saying the tariff tax increase will cause inflation, but the reduction in income taxes will also cause inflation. My mind is spinning around. I don't understand the logic of this, Judy. So how do you feel about, A, will tariffs cause inflation, and B, will the Trump tax cuts cause inflation?
Here, it's funny. I don't mean to make it funny, but there's a solution in that. We import about $3.8 trillion worth of goods from our trade partners.
Sorry, what's the number again? What was it?
3.8 trillion. It's about
a year
of our total GDP.
So 3.8 trillion a year.
Yes.
Got it. Okay.
And if you put a 20% tariff, let's just say, back of the envelope on that, it would generate, and everybody just paid that higher price, which is the static way that Democrats analyze the impact of Trump policies. They say, everyone will just pay the extra amount. I think, where did they get the money? What are they not buying now, since they're going to pay more for that? Put 20% on that, you just generated $760 billion to the federal budget, because that's who collects the tariff.
Yes.
All of these criticisms of the Trump tax cuts say, here's what it will cost in terms of lost federal revenues. Well, the highest estimate put out by the Tax Foundation put it around $600 billion. So you could cover it in one fell swoop.
Right. Yeah. I mean, they're arguing, they can't argue that a tax cut over here causes inflation, but a tax increase over here causes inflation too. It has to be one or the other, Judy. And it seems to me people are talking out of both sides of their mouth on this, but that happens all the time. Judy Shelton, we are out of time. Thanks so much for joining. The book is as good as gold. And it is if you want to understand monetary policy, there's probably no better book than that. Judy, have a great rest of your weekend. We'll be right back, folks. This is the More Money Show on WABC.
This is More Money with economist Steve Moore. Now, Steve Moore.
Welcome back, folks. This is the More Money Show on WABC. We're already getting some returns on what is the worst of all the Christmas carols, and one of them came from my assistant here, who is managing the show, and he says Frosty the Snowman is. But that's not even a Christmas song. I don't get why we play that at Christmas. I guess because it has to do about snow. But I will announce at the top of the next hour my least favorite Christmas song. But in the meantime, and by the way, we will be taking your calls very shortly. This is the More Money hotline, and that's 1-800-848-9222. But in the meantime, I have Monica Crowley on, who is a good friend. I love Monica. You all know her from Fox News. You know her from her weekly columns that are in the Washington Times and published all over the country. She was Assistant Secretary for Public Affairs at the U.S. Department of Treasury. I'm sure she's going to be in a very, very high-level position in the incoming second term for President Trump. And Monica, thanks so much for joining this afternoon.
Hey, good afternoon, Steve, and right back at you, and a very happy Thanksgiving to you and your family.
Monica, I just can't stop smiling.
I know. I'm right there with you. And it's not just because it's Thanksgiving and the holiday season. It's because we are actually going to take our country back. We're actually going to save America, Steve.
So I was on earlier today on Larry Kudlow's show, who comes on before me, and you know Larry very well. You're good friends with Larry as well. And we were talking about the fact that, and I want your reaction to this, that it seems like the whole wokeism is past, and that people are sick of it. They're tired of being lectured. They're tired of being called racist because they disagree with something that you say. And I think even corporate America is starting to realize there's something going on in America, that we are a center right country, and we don't want to be lectured to anymore.
You know, there are so many beautiful elements to this last election, the landslide of victory, the mandate for President Trump, his administration, Republicans in Congress. But what you're pointing to here, Steve, the collapse of wokeness, is another critical element of this. It really kind of began to falter during President Trump's first term, right? When he was out there in 2015 and 2016 campaigning and telling the American people the truth. He was telling them the truth about the border and illegal immigration, and everybody jumped all over him. Remember when he said, well, you know, they're letting in rapists and murderers, and I guess some are fine people, but they're letting it. And he got so attacked, and yet he just persisted in telling the American people and the world the truth about the state of the country, about our problems, and about what could be done to fix them. He got roundly attacked, and anybody else who came forward and was a truth teller like President Trump got roundly attacked. And yet he kept going, Steve. So I want to make sure Donald Trump gets a huge lion's share of the credit for the collapse of wokeism. But then this time around, he was joined by another incredibly powerful force named Elon Musk.
Right.
And Elon Musk is the richest man in the world, so he cannot be canceled. And when he joined forces with President Trump to tell the American people the truth, and when he bought Twitter and allowed the truth to be expressed and amplified on an at-scale platform like X, it went so far to destroy the whole superstructure of wokeness and cancel culture and all of the language that was being used to silence and intimidate the rest of us. it was Musk and Trump who did all of the blocking for the rest of us, and courage is contagious. So when those two men showed how courageous they were and are in pushing back against this whole kind of tyrannical regime in every way, right? This tyrannical regime, when they stood up and literally took bullets and pressed back, then it gave everybody else the courage to do the same. And that's why you're seeing the whole thing crumble.
So even some of my Democrat friends, Monica, and I do have Democrat friends, and I know you have Democrat friends too, and we have a lot of Democrat listeners who I appreciate on this show. I've noticed that a couple things. First, did you know Donald Trump's his approval rating is higher than it's ever been right now? Did you know that?
Yes.
It's amazing.
50%. Yeah, incredible.
So that means that even a lot of people who didn't vote for Trump think, hey, this guy may actually do the things he said he's going to do. He's going to get, secure our border. He's going to bring jobs back to America. He's going to get inflation under control. He's going to produce American energy, which are, in my view, Monica, those are just 80-20 issues. Any common sense person is in favor of those things, except for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. They're not for those things, but most Americans are.
Yes, absolutely. And, the difference this time around is that the American people did not have to take a leap of faith with Donald Trump like they did in 2016, right?
Good point.
I mean, back then, he was a very famous man, okay, and a business magnate, hugely successful in New York and elsewhere. So people knew who he was, but as a political leader, nobody really knew how he was going to govern. So they did take a leap of faith, and they said, look, I hope that he is good for his word when he says that he is going to champion the forgotten men and women in this country and that he is going to do what he says. So let's try it out, because Lord knows it can't be worse than the Uni Party that has driven this country off a cliff over many decades. So, they took kind of a gamble with Donald Trump back in 2016.
Yes.
And he spent 4 years as president doing exactly what he said he was going to do, delivering for the forgotten men and women in this country by delivering a robust economy through a pro-growth economic agenda. And you were such a critical part of this, Steve, you and Larry and so many others, of delivering tax cuts, regulatory relief, unleashing our great energy sector, and fair trade deals with our trading partners. So we delivered a strong economy for the forgotten men and women of this country.
Right.
He delivered an enforced border, law and order, and peace through strength. Frankly, Steve, I don't know what more people expect or want from an American president. He literally delivers everything you hire a president for.
There's a book about this.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt. I was just saying there's a very good book about this called The Trump Economic Miracle by Arthur Laffer and Stephen Moore. And it outlines exactly what you're saying. And so, folks, if you want to get a good stocking stuffer, go get the Trump Economic Miracle, because it just, when you were talking, Monica, I said, gee, you're right. And all those things that we document with the statistics, because what you're saying is 100% correct. Now, I want to change gears for a minute, if I may. So there's a new poll that just came out, Monica, and I found it to be highly instructive. And the question was, do you think that America is the greatest country on earth? And it is interesting that so almost every group, including Black Americans, and they're mostly Democrats, 58% of Black Americans say, yes, America is the greatest country on earth. A large number of middle-class people, over 75%, say, yes, America is the greatest country on earth. Conservatives like you and me, self-identified conservatives, 88% of us say that America is the greatest country on earth. Now, here's my quiz question for you, Monica. You know who does not agree with that?
Who?
White, rich liberals.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
Yeah,
I'm not surprised.
And they only 1 out of 3 white rich liberals, and that includes people in academia, and that includes people in the media, that includes people in the technology industry. They are so out of touch, Monica, with real America.
And, they diss the country that has given them every opportunity for success, for wealth and prosperity and success in whatever line of work or profession they would choose, right? But, you got to understand the modern Democrat Party is not the party of JFK or even of Bill Clinton. You are dealing largely with a revolutionary party, a leftist, you could call it Marxist revolutionary party. So, of course, their whole objective is to destroy. They are at war with the Constitution. They're at war with free market economics, which is what you focus on this show. They are at war with those things. So, of course, they're not happy about America because they want to fundamentally transform America, and they're on a mission to do so. By the way, Steve, I also want to point out to all these people who think America is not the greatest country on earth and that they're really miserable and unhappy here, they can self-deport. They can get out of America if they so choose. If they see a better option on the horizon somewhere, France, China, Japan, please take advantage of that opportunity. Your passport goes both ways. You can leave the country for good and try to build your communist utopia somewhere else.
I find it so interesting, that everyone on the left keeps calling America a racist country. And yet, if you look at the people who want to come in, and look, I'm very pro-immigrant. They have to come in legally, not illegally. But they are people of color who are coming into this country. So why would they come into this country, Monica, if you're black or brown or red-skinned or whatever, if you're coming to a country that hates minorities and people with, I don't even understand that. How do they even explain that?
Well, now, and certainly since 2015, and we just talked about this, about the collapse of wokeness, is that the whole superstructure of lies has been exposed. And again, that's Donald Trump and Elon Musk in different ways. So the scales have fallen from the eyes of millions of people, not just here, but around the world. They know that all of this was a pack of lies. It was a narrative meant to keep the American people down and in line and obedient. And we stood up and said, no more. We're taking our country back. And that's why you've seen this very significant political realignment, Steve, with, as you point out, African Americans, Latinos, Asians, so many disaffected Democrats, so many have come over to President Trump, his pro-growth economic agenda for the forgotten men and women, and they're voting Republican for the first time. And you know what? I don't think they're going anywhere. We're looking at another 4 years of great success under President Trump. He is going to deliver for every American once again, and that is going to lock in big momentum for the years ahead.
Monica, thanks so much for joining. That's Monica Crowley, who is going to very soon be in a very, very high-level position serving Donald J. Trump. And I know you are, because I know how much Donald Trump appreciates you. Monica, thanks so much for joining. And Mr. Producer, let's try to just squeeze in that one caller before we go to the Paynes.
Hello?
Yes. We've got exactly 1 minute. So please, what's your name and what is your idea?
Okay, my name is Kathleen, and I'm calling from Yonkers. And I wanted to say that if the young people in the three-letter agencies and the local governments would learn about the radio and how radio works, the attempt on the president could have been prevented, because if they were listening to a frequency, all the frequencies in one place, they would have heard what was going on. So clearly, the young people, and I mean young, under 60, don't know how radio works.
Well, you know what? They don't listen to the radio. I mean, it's funny because, our show has a great audience, but they tend to be older people, and younger people tend not to listen to radio. But I love talk radio. I know you do too. That's why you're listening. Thanks so much for calling in.
It's More Money with leading economist Steve Moore.
Stephen Moore is with us, economist.
With more than 30 years experience as an economist and as a leading thinker of government on business, showing deep understanding of the shifts in the global economy. He's leading economist Steve Moore with More Money on Talk Radio 77 WABC. Now, here's your host, Steve Moore.
Welcome, folks. This is the second hour of the More Money Show on WABC. I am your host, Steve Moore. It is always a great high honor to be able to be in front of this microphone every Saturday afternoon. We are live. We are in color, and we will be taking your calls throughout this second hour. I apologize for those who've been holding on. The question of the day is the same question I've asked for the last couple of weeks, but we've had so many callers calling in that I want to get all of them your opinion on these, because I'm putting you to work today, folks. What would you advise the Department of Government Efficiency? Is it Doge or Doge? I forget which one it is, but whatever it is absolutely essential that we get rid of non-essential government services and reduce these costs so we can get back to financial sanity in Washington, so we can get back to a balanced budget. What a concept that is. God, we haven't. Let's see, the last time we had a balanced budget was 2000. So it's been 25 years since we've had a balanced budget. And now, thanks to Joe Biden's profligacy, we are running a near $2 trillion annual deficit. That cannot stand. We have to reverse that. We have to make sure that we are paying our bills. That's what a responsible nation does. And so my question of the day for you all, and I'd love to hear from Democrats, by the way, because this is a nonpartisan issue. I don't care if you're a Republican, Democrat, Independent. I don't care if you're a liberal, conservative. Everyone knows we cannot tolerate fraud, waste, abuse, redundancy, obsolescence. All of those things have to be eliminated so we can have a first-rate government providing the services that America wants at an affordable price that doesn't bankrupt our country. That's what this show is about. How do we prevent national bankruptcy? How do we get prosperous? How can you make money? That's why we call it the More Money Show. By the way, I was tickled by that news flash that Brenda Lee is back on the charts. Brenda Lee, whose very famous book, Rocking Around the Christmas Tree, is back on the charts again. That song came out, I believe, in 1959 or 1960. So that would mean it is, let's see if I can do the math, or 65 years old, that song, and it's still one of the best Christmas carols. Now, I was asking earlier in the show, for those of you just joining, if you call in, I want you to tell me what your least favorite Christmas carol is. And we've had a couple of already that have come in. Frosty the Snowman, people don't like that one. And we had one other one. Now I forget which one it is, but I'm going to give you now my least favorite Christmas song. Actually, it's a tie between two. I hate the song Deck the Halls. La 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 la. I hate that song. And the other one I cannot stand is the Little Drummer Boy. I don't like those two songs. But all the other ones I love. I love. Oh Holy Night is probably my favorite Christmas carol, but I would love to hear from you. Not what your favorite is, but what your least favorite is. And of course, when you call in, you have to tell me what you think is the area where you would advise both Vivek Ramaswamy and Elon Musk and Donald Trump to cut spending and cut waste. I mentioned earlier on the show, if you're just tuning in, that we should have a national garage sale and sell off assets that we're not using and raise money and use every penny that's raised. And I think we can raise tens of billions of dollars and use that money to retire some of our national debt. But I would love to hear from you. And I don't know, Mr. Producer, do we have any callers on the line right now? I know we have some at the top of the hour. I think that, by the way, the number is 1-800-848-9222. 1-800-848-9222 is the More Money hotline. Mr. Producer, do we have any callers right now? Richard, thanks so much for calling in. First of all, do you have a least favorite Christmas carol?
Yes, hi, good afternoon, Steve. Yeah, it's the Beatles song, Having a Wonderful Christmas Time. It's not
yeah.
to me.
Okay. Well, you know, the
agree with you on
Beatles,
Drummer Boy,
I'm a
too. I
big
never
Beatles
liked-
fan, and the Beatles used to do a Christmas record. I don't know if you all know this, but from 1963 through 1969, the Beatles every year put out a Christmas message to their fan club. And they had one song I'll remember. I don't remember it off the top of my head. That was kind of Christmas Time Is Here, I think it was called, and it was a very kind of funny song. And Ringo Starr, I think, Tim, made a hit out of that later when he was a solo artist. But anyway, that's a good one. But more importantly, what, sir, do you think we should cut out of this budget to bring down our deficit?
We need to stop the outflow of monies sent abroad by illegals living here to their home countries. Mexico gets $75 billion a year. Well, from people all over. I don't know how many American illegals, right? But that's 4.25% of their GDP. It's their second largest industry. So we either need to make it illegal somehow, or tax the money at 50% or something. So this way you discourage people from coming here in the first place. If they can't send the money home, why come here?
Yeah. Well, that's a great point. You know, I am very pro-immigrant, but they have to come in legally. And if they're coming in illegally and then sending money back to Mexico, I'm not so sure how we benefit from that transaction. Great call. I want to try to squeeze in one or two more if there are. I think there's one open line. The War Money hotline is 1-800 848-9222 or 1-800-848-WABC. Mr. Producer, do we have time for one more caller? Liz, thanks so much for calling.
Oh, hold on. The worst song ever is Grandma Got Run Over by a Reindeer.
Yes, that I'm just laughing because a couple of people here in the studio with me had suggested that one. And so I think you're right. I think it's kind of cute, but I understand what you say. That's a great one. Okay, now, more importantly, ma'am, will you please tell me what you think? What is your advice to Elon Musk in terms of what we should cut? How do we get rid of the flab and the inefficiency and the redundancy in our government?
Get rid of the fancy hotel rooms, the gift cards, and the telephones that every illegal immigrant got. Take them back. They'll all go home.
And it's not just illegal immigrants. Remember what they called those? They called them the Obama phones. Remember that?
No, I didn't. I didn't know it's been that long.
Oh, yeah. There was back when Obama was running for president, he had promised all these people that he was going to give them free telephones, and they were called Obama phones. And we're going to come up with the money to give people free, all these free things. Really great point. I love your call. Thanks for listening, by the way. And we'll try to squeeze in one more caller if we may. Mr. Producer, do we have one more caller? If not, let me make one final point. Oh, Danny. Okay, Danny. Very quickly. First of all, what's your least favorite Christmas song?
Grandma Got Run Over by a Reindeer.
Okay, that one's running away with it. All right. And, sir, in just a minute or two we have left, what would you suggest to Elon Musk for cutting our government spending? I've got some great ideas that have come in already.
Oh, God, whatever he decides.
Yeah. Are you hopeful, sir, that this is going to be a successful, this Department of Government Efficiency? Do you think they're going to be able to find the savings that we can help balance the budget?
Absolutely.
Let me ask you a question, sir, if I may. Because this is a question that's often asked in polls, and I just want your opinion. What percentage of every dollar? Let me put it like this. How many cents out of every dollar that government spends in Washington, what percentage, how many cents of that dollar do you think are wasted?
Oh my God, that's hard for me to answer. I would say at least 1/4 of it.
Wow, at least 25 cents of every dollar. That's pretty close to what most Americans say. Most Americans say about 30 to 35 cents. By the way, if you are accurate, sir, and I think you're probably pretty close to being accurate, that would mean out of our $7 trillion budget, we could cut about $1.7 trillion. And by the way, that would probably come close to balancing the budget. Sir, thank you so much for calling. We're going to take a quick break, and then when we come back, I'm going to have on the phone John McLaughlin, who's one of the top pollsters in the country, to give us a feel for what is going on right now. What are the American people feeling? Why is there this joy? Because I'm feeling the joy. I just sense it. People are happy about Donald Trump's election. Even some Democrats are. We'll be right back. This is WABC. This is the More Money Show.
This is More Money with economist Steve Moore. Now, Steve Moore.
Welcome back, folks. This is the More Money Show. We're having fun this afternoon. We're talking about money. We're talking about politics. We're talking about Christmas songs. We're talking about how to save money in Washington. The question of the day is, what advice would you give to Elon Musk in terms of how he can cut the waste in our budget, which is in the hundreds of billions of dollars, of my opinion. But also, I'm asking callers who call in, what is your least favorite Christmas song? Mine is Deck the Halls, which I can't stand. La, 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 la. I hate that song. But right now, the winner is what? Grandma got run over by a reindeer. We've had a number of callers saying that's their least favorite. John McLaughlin is now with us. John McLaughlin is one of the top pollsters in America. He called this election, by the way. John, you got it smack on the nose. I am proud of you, because when all the pollsters were saying, oh, it looks like, Kamala has a 3 or 4 percentage point lead, you saw it coming. John, first of all, thanks for joining.
Thank you, Stephen. And I'm only as good because I worked for Donald Trump all these years. So he's someone who creates the polls. We just take the polls and report the numbers. And if you come at it and you're unbiased and you ask people their opinions and you do the poll properly, that you screen likely voters and you model them after typical turnouts. Donald Trump was a winner. And so, we're just reading the polls. Tony Fabrizio, myself, and this campaign.
You called it on this show about 3 weeks before the election. And let me ask you this, John. Was there anything in particular that surprised you about what happened in terms of, one thing that surprised me was 55% of Hispanic males, 55% voted for Donald J. Trump.
Right. And overall, we also got 38% of Hispanic women.
Which is amazing.
And overall, the 46%, that was a record. It was higher than George W. got in 2004. Yeah. But, it was part of it. There was a strategy that was over 2 years out. We were working with Dick Morris and John Jordan, and we did some polls of African-American voters, Hispanic voters, suburban women, and younger voters. And they were basically the 4 legs of the Democrat Party, where we were going to take voters out of the Obama coalition and create a new majority coalition, win the popular vote for Donald Trump. And he executed. He listened. He connected with them on the issues. And he built this huge working class coalition, working middle class taxpayers across America, that really, it wasn't just the heartland. We went up in all these, your home state of Illinois, my home state of New York, New Jersey. We were gaining popular vote all across the country.
Yeah. So, you were talking about the JFK coalition and the Obama coalition, but, you go back to the, FDR, Franklin Roosevelt New Deal coalition, which was sort of Catholics and minorities and middle-class union workers. They seem to have swung now. So even the FDR coalition is now a Trump coalition.
Right. And by the way, Trump may be the first president since FDR to win 3 presidential elections in a row. Who knows? So,
now, I'm not going to go there with that one, John. But this has been an historic election in so many ways. It's become a cliche, but what a comeback. You go back to the end of after the 2020 election, and it just seemed like Donald Trump was yesterday, that there was no way he could come back, and he did in a big way. And John, you observed it firsthand, but my God, this guy is a workhorse. I've never seen anything like it. I spent a couple of days on the campaign trail with him, and I was completely exhausted. But he would start at 6 o'clock in the morning. He would go till 10 o'clock at night, nonstop, flying all over the country, ran circles around Kamala Harris. And I don't know. Have you ever seen anything like that?
No. No, he's a phenomenal worker. I mean, and by the way, what's really to credit to you and to Larry Kudlow and Steve Forbes and Arthur Laffer, you've all advised him on economics. And he listened. He ran an issue-oriented campaign. Remember, we were putting up during the primary, we put up videos. He ran a pro-growth, economic-oriented campaign. He was running to make the Trump tax cuts permanent because he knew if those tax cuts lapse, it would be a $5 trillion tax hike and raise taxes on 91% of all Americans. And our friend Steve Forbes told us that it won't just be a recession, it'll be a depression. And that was a big part of the campaign. Right down to the end, we were looking in the polls, looking in the swing voters, and you looked at the people who had switched from Biden 2020 to voting for Trump in 24. A quarter of them were black, a quarter of them were Hispanic. Their average age was 45. They were younger, but they didn't want to pay those taxes. Yeah. And there were other issues that he was running on, securing the border and keeping us safe, ending the endless wars, lowering crime, et cetera. But the economic growth piece was essential. And in our post-election survey that we put on our website on McLaughlinOnline.com, that was the leading reason why people voted for Donald Trump.
Wait, what was the leading? It was the economy?
It was the economy. Absolutely, it was the economy. It's the reason why they voted for him.
Yeah. So, by the way, thank you for the kind comment you made about what Larry and I and Laffer and Steve Forbes did. But I've just got to be honest with you. I mean, we did advise him on the tax plan, on many other issues, but he just has an instinct about it, John. I mean, first of all, he's a businessman, so he knows how the economy works, unlike, say, a Joe Biden or Kamala Harris. But he just had it instinctively. He always got it, So it wasn't all we were doing was telling him what he already knew, and but we're very proud of that tax cut. I want to just ask you about another issue that's near and dear to my heart. I know it's important to you, and that is the issue of school choice, because Trump is I think you know this, John, but Trump was the first president of any major party ever to endorse school choice for low-income parents to send their kids to the best school. And I think, you're the pollster, you're the guy who has your finger on the pulse of how voters feel. I think that was a major reason, one of the reasons that Hispanics voted for Trump, because they don't want to have their kids in failed public schools. They want choice. They want Catholic schools or Jewish schools, or they want Montessori schools or charter schools.
Well, you can see it even in the Bronx where he held his rally. We improved an AOC's district. Why? Because Hispanics want they want school choice. Because right now you have a cap on charter schools. There's no support for Catholic schools. Catholic schools are still closing down, and it's.
What do you mean? There's no support for? You mean the government providing
from the tax? Right. It's all out of the parents have to sacrifice, do it on their own.
Yes.
And sure, there's lots of charities that will come up with scholarships, but nowhere near enough. And so you look at, we've got a great nominee for the Secretary of Education in Linda McMahon, and President Trump put it in the platform because he knows education has to improve in the United States, because all around the country, I've worked for people like the late Bertie Marcus, who used to support a lot of initiatives around, like in Georgia, Governor Deal passed an amendment. You can open up a charter school anywhere in the state of Georgia. It's in their state constitution, and the people voted for it. So, when we're in we're ranked at in the 30s of all nations. We should be at the top when it comes to math and science.
We should.
And English, et cetera. And people are looking at the billions and billions we're paying for education.
Yes.
And it's going into a federal bureaucracy where the employees don't even have to show up. I mean, we just released a survey that Tea Party Patriots did. 71% of all voters in America on Election Day support the creating DOGE, so your Department of Government Efficiency, and 65% think these government employees that have been out since COVID, they've been working remote, need to go back to the office.
Yeah.
And otherwise you could sell those buildings in Washington. You don't need buildings that workers don't go into.
Well, we've been doing for the last 3 weeks on this show, I've been taking callers because we're a live show. We're a live and in color. But I've been asking my listeners, how do you think we could save money what would your advice be to Elon Musk? And what you just said, John, I'm not surprised that your polling finds that, because so many of our people have called in and said, look, I have to show up to the office. If I don't show up to the office, I don't get paid. And you've got, by the way, the number is only 10% of federal workers are working 40 hours a week in the office today. And if they're not there, I think what our listeners believe, and we have listeners of all political persuasions, they should be fired. And if they're not showing up, maybe we don't need the office buildings anymore. We could sell them.
Yep, absolutely. But, people want results. They want better education for our children.
Yep.
And they realize that we need it for a good economy and for America to be the great country that it needs to be in the world. You have to have the best education for our young people. And if you don't have a good option for schools, if the public schools in your area are failing, they need school choice. And you've seen it in Georgia, you've seen it in Indiana. Indiana, the money follows the student, whether they have public school choice, they have private school choice, and the money follows the student. So the better public schools, there's a lot of choice where the better public schools get more students and they survive and they do very well.
It's competition. It's competition. Yes. By the way, the one, you're familiar with New York. I don't know if you live in New York, but I know you do a lot of polling there. And as you probably know, John, I'm from Chicago, and those are two of the areas of the country that have some of the worst public schools. And it is heartbreaking to me that the politicians, and in most cases, these are cities that are run by Democrats, they are basically carrying the water for the teachers' unions, not the kids.
Right. And it has to be for the kids. I mean, you don't get, when they're in second grade and they're learning to read and write, you don't get another chance. You know, it's like you can repeat a year, but still, it's like you need to make sure they learn what they need to learn in second grade, third grade, fourth grade. They need every student that's graduating in eighth grade, moving into high school, they need to be proficient at math and reading. And if they're not, we got to get them some help, and they got to give the parents some ability to choose what's best for their children, for their students.
So, two quick questions, John, and I'll let you go. I appreciate you, by the way. John, this is John McLaughlin, who's one of the top pollsters in the country and did some polling for Trump, so he knows what people were feeling. First of all, was there anything that surprised you about the election that, in terms of, where your polling was and how things turned out? What was your major surprise on that Tuesday, election day?
We didn't have many surprises. We had inside information when we were doing.
You had it right. Okay, well, good.
We were going to win but on the other hand, it was good to see the strategy work. It was good to see President Trump. I guess you know what the biggest thing. If you go to that exit poll, Donald Trump had a 56% job approval, which was the highest ever. As on election day when we did the polls from November 4th through the 6th, and he only had a 43 disapprove. Much higher than Kamala Harris was a negative, Biden was a negative. And the interesting thing was Donald Trump was more likable. He had his highest favorable rating ever, where he was a net positive. And she was like 50 and 49, but she was polarized. But Donald Trump, they were throwing personal character assassination at him.
Trying to shoot him.
Names, calling Nazi. Yeah. Well, we thank God for the grace of God he survived that. But at the end, she had no message. It was all about if you dislike Trump, and people wanted real solutions. And Donald Trump just like he handled these political indictments that were totally phony, just like he handled a lot of things with grace and dignified determination. In the end, she was talking about working at McDonald's. She never did. Donald Trump.
So do you think do you think two other final quick questions, and then we got a break, and I'm talking to John McLaughlin. Number one, do you think that these phony, baloney indictments of Trump hurt the Democrats?
Absolutely.
Was there a backlash?
We saw it firsthand. I mean, on April 1st, when Alvin Bragg was going to indict Donald Trump, Jason Miller, the communications director, called me and says, we got to do a national poll tonight and have results tomorrow. Right. And the potential for the backfire was there. And all during the year, and we published a lot of these polls through June. As of June this year, 6 out of 10 voters thought they were political. The majority thought that Joe Biden had ordered them to stop Donald Trump from being president.
So my second question quickly is, there was one thing that pollsters got wrong, and I don't know if you got it wrong, and not hugely, but, we heard about a big, surge in the black vote for Trump, but I was just looking at the numbers. It really didn't. There was a slight increase in the percentage of black men who voted for Trump, but actually there was a slight increase in black women who voted for Kamala. So what do you think happened there?
What happened was she was a woman, and what you did was you picked a black woman.
She's a black woman, and so
against Joe Biden, we were winning, double digits, 15, 20% or better among African Americans, because they were very upset at the job they did. We held 21% of black men, according to the CNN exit polls, but we lost some black women. But it's there. Donald Trump did better than he ever did among African Americans, and African Americans are identifying more with the Republican Party. So it's a start that they have to continue, because we're going to need those votes in the midterm election. But we did very well in Georgia and North Carolina and other states where I was polling.
And John, do you want to take our poll? Do you want to tell me what your least favorite Christmas carol is? Because I know with a name like McLaughlin, you must be a Catholic boy.
I just love Christmas. There's nothing about Christmas.
Well, what do you think about Grandma got run over by a reindeer? You like that one?
Oh yeah, sure.
Okay. John McLaughlin, thank you so much for joining on this Saturday afternoon, folks. We will be taking your calls when I come back. 1-800-848-9222. What is your advice for Elon Musk in terms of the Government Reform Commission? 1-800-848-9222. And we'll be taking your calls when we get right back.
This is More Money with economist Steve Moore. Now, Steve Moore.
We're having so much fun today, folks. This is the More Money Show on WABC, and it is a holiday weekend, so we're going a little light today. We're just having fun. By the way, it's beautiful weather all over the East Coast. I know that a lot of areas in the Northeast got hit with snow, but, beautiful sunshine, a little chilly. So go out and bundle up after the show is over in 30 minutes and get out and get the fresh air, because I've always said one of the themes of this show is that sunlight and fresh air are the best disinfectants, the best way to stay healthy. So the question of the day, by the way, is what advice would you give to if you were advising Elon Musk? How do we cut government spending? Because we're running a $2 trillion deficit. I'm also asking, we're having fun, we're asking our callers what you think is your least favorite Christmas carol. The one that seems to be running away with it right now is Grandma Got Run Over by a Reindeer, but I'd like to hear some of your other choices. Before I take the calls, I think we have one line open on the More Money hotline, 1-800-848-9222. And Steve, I will be right with you. So thank you for hanging in. I wanted to just show you this poll result that I find really interesting. That Americans were asked, do you think America is a systemically racist country? Now, this has been a common theme on my show. I do not believe America is systemically racist. Of course, we have some racial sins in our past, the horrors of segregation and slavery and Jim Crow laws. We all learn about that, and we all hate that kind of racism. But today, do you think we're systemically racist? Now, is there racism in the country? Of course there is. Of course there are racist people in the country. There are racist people in every country, including Africa. They're a racist country. One tribe kills people in another tribe. That's racism. But do you think we're systemically racist? I reject that notion. And my attitude is the United States is the least systemically racist country in the world, because we take people from all over the world. We take people with brown skin and black skin and red skin and this culture and that culture, and we do become a melting pot. It isn't easy, but we do assimilate better than any other country in the world. And you see this, by the way, in the fact that interracial and intercultural marriage rates are very high. I mean, race just doesn't matter that much. The only people who are obsessed with race today tend to be liberal white elites who all they want to talk about is race. And if they disagree with someone, like me, they just say we're racist because we have conservative viewpoints. So anyway, I was really fascinated and heartened by this poll result that shows that by a 2 to 3 margin, Americans do not believe that we're a systemically racist country. 2 out of 3 Americans say no, we are not. And that includes Hispanics who say we're not a systemically racist country. Now, unfortunately, 60% of Black Americans do say we're systemically racist. But that wasn't the biggest group that thinks we're systemically racist. Is white, upper class liberals, progressives who are so hyper obsessed with race. But I'm heartened by the fact that so many Americans understand that we are not a racist country, because I just don't think we are. And I'm not saying there's not racism. I'm just saying it's not systemic. And I hate racism. Everyone does. We should judge people by the content of their character, not the color of their skin. And we're getting better at that every year that goes by. So that is good news. That is very good news. One other quick thing. The drugs in this country are a massive, massive problem. I've been saying this on Fox News. I've been on a number of those Fox News shows because Donald Trump has proposed a tariff on any country that brings in fentanyl, heroin, or other killer drugs that are lethal to our children. And I am not a tariff guy. I'm a free trader. I believe that free trade makes countries rich. If two countries, the freedom to trade by definition makes both countries better off. Just like if I trade with you, if I trade this for that, and we both agree to it, by definition, we're both better off. And yet, Trump is saying, I'm going to impose a tariff on China, on Mexico, and Canada if they continue to allow these drugs to come in. And look, I'm for this. I am for this because I cannot, we need the Mexican government to take on these drug cartels and to shut them down and to do whatever it takes, because it's killing thousands and thousands of our children and addicting hundreds of thousands of our children. And I'm talking about kids that are as young as 12, 13, 14 years old, young adults. It is a scourge on our society. It is a deadly weapon that's being brought into this country, and we have to stop it. And if it takes Trump, threatening these countries, Mexico, China, and Canada, with tariffs, if they don't stop it, then I'm all for it. And I know that even Trudeau is saying, "Okay, we're going to stop this, Mr. President. We're going to help you stop the inflow of deadly drugs into our country." And I think Mexico, in the end of the day, I think they will cooperate. And Lord knows what China is going to do. But if China is going to keep sending these drugs into our country that kill our kids, then I say slap them with tariffs. That's my view. I know that may be unpopular with some of you, some of my and I'm a free trader. But in this case, I am with Trump on this one. So let us now get to the dashboard. And the lights are lighting up. And I believe who's our first caller, Mr. Producer? Peter, thank you so much for joining the show today. What's your least favorite Christmas carol?
Oh, hello?
Thank you for joining.
Oh, I'm on. Oh, okay. Yeah. A Wonderful Christmas Time, John Lennon and Yoko Ono. I love the Beatles,
like that?
but Yoko Ono couldn't hold
No. Hold on. Time out. You've got it wrong. That is not John Lennon. That is Paul McCartney.
Having a wonderful Christmas time. Yeah, that's John Lennon. John Lennon and Yoko Ono.
No, isn't that Paul McCartney? Yeah, that's Paul McCartney. You got Lennon and McCartney mixed up.
Okay, well that's that one.
No,
okay.
the famous John Lennon song, which is one of my 5 favorite Christmas songs, is "So This Is Christmas." And remember the big billboard, Tim, in New York, on Times Square. Happy Christmas, war is over. But anyway,
I stand corrected. I thought that was a big
okay,
deal,
but it's a Paul McCartney song. All right, but that's okay. I'm going to put that down on our list. Now, sir, much more importantly, what should we do to be cutting government spending? What is your advice to Elon Musk?
Nancy Pelosi's wardrobe. Okay.
Okay. How much money do you think we can get for that? She's probably got millions of dollars.
On a serious note, deportation is very expensive.
Yeah, okay.
But by spending the money, it'll be a savings in the long run. They all have to go and come back legally. They're depleting us, and it would it cost to keep them here, and not mentioning the fentanyl and everything. That all has to stop, and by doing so, it's going to cost money, but it'll save money.
Great call, sir. I appreciate it. I think you're exactly right. And what I favor is if someone's in the country right now illegally and they're working, so they're not committing any crimes, they're just working, they're holding a job, then what we ought to do is have a system where they're not collecting government welfare benefits or anything like that. We should have a system where they could go back to their home, but re-enter the country the right way if they have a job lined up, again, if they haven't committed a crime. And I know that kind of puts them first in line, and maybe some of you may think that's unfair. But look, we do need people who want to come in here and work. We do have a shortage of hardworking people in this country. But if you've committed a crime and you're illegal, get your ass out of this country. And I'm with Homan on this. We got to get rid of the criminals in this country because that is terrorizing Americans. So who is our next caller, Mr. Producer? Okay. Yes, sir, you're on.
Hi, thank you. The first of all, the carol that I can't stand is Dominic the Donkey.
Okay. Ding, ding, ding. You got a good one there, sir. Okay. Very good. And now what is your suggestion?
My idea. I love the way Trump is wielding the tariffs as a weapon, along with the way he has handled our NATO allies that have not paid their fair share until he took over. This gave me an idea.
Yes.
The most corrupt organization in the world is right here in New York. That's the United Nations.
Yes, you've got that right.
Now, every one of the diplomats there, from the Chinese embassy to the Iranians to North Korea, every villainous regime has diplomatic immunity. But there must be some way on which President-to-be Trump could wield a tariff on the diplomats for living here to extract it in proportion, let us say, to their gross national product or the known wealth of the tyrants in power?
Mm-hmm.
Isn't there some way in which we cannot touch their diplomatic immunity? That part is true. That's built into law and the Charter of the United Nations. But there's nothing that says that we can't make their living expenses extremely high for them in a way, because I would like the United Nations to be out of the United States.
All right. Great call. Listen, I appreciate it. And I agree with you. Look, I think we should just pull out of the United Nations. Seriously, I don't see any benefit to the United Nations. I never did. And by the way, all these diplomats come into the country and they don't pay their parking fines. They don't pay their rent. And then the New Yorkers get stuck with the tab. It isn't fair. And that would be a good way to cut our expenditures. I want to mention one thing that I would get rid of. I think that the Department of Education, if you look over the last 50 years, since Jimmy Carter created this agency, the more money we have spent every year, folks, the more money we've spent on the Department of Education, the more the test scores go down. In other words, if you spend money on something, you should be getting results. Right? You should be getting results. And we're not getting results. We're getting negative results from the spending. So we could save $80 billion just by getting rid of this spending. By the way, how much of that money do you think actually gets in the classroom? I mean, the best estimates are 20 cents out of the dollar get to the classroom. The rest just goes to bureaucracy. So that's a perfect example of how we could cut spending. Mr. Producer, let's try to squeeze in one or two more if we can. Okay, you are on, sir.
Hi.
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 You are on. I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name.
This is Tony in Clifton.
Okay. Go ahead.
Listen, Steve, I love you, and here's my thought. Everyone should be working. The government, all the buildings that are empty, a percentage of them should be used for people who are collecting unemployment and all these different benefits, because we need to put people to work. No more free benefits. Some of those buildings can be used for working.
I agree. I entirely agree. And by the way, people who are getting government benefits, before I let you go, I believe that people who are getting government benefits should be required to work for those benefits. What say you?
Exactly. And also, It's an incentive to move the economy. Made in America. I don't want to go into the stores anymore, Steve Moore, and see everything made in China. I'm sick of it.
Me too. All right. Before I let you go, you've got to answer today's question. What is your least favorite Christmas song?
Yeah, well, the reindeer. Someone got run over by a reindeer. Don't like that one.
Okay, it's Runaway. I mean, it's a stampede for that song. Thanks so much for calling in. We're going to try to squeeze in one more caller, Mr. Producer, if we can. Go ahead.
I don't like any of the Alvin and the Chipmunk Christmas. That just grates on my nerves.
Oh, that's a good one. Oh, my gosh. We have such smart callers. I think that's a great one. All right. The Chipmunks. I've never liked that. Maybe you listen to it once. It's kind of clever, but they play those songs over and over on the radio. And what is your suggestion, sir, for Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy for cutting our budget?
To save money, she wanted to sell gold-backed treasury bonds.
That's what, by the way, I don't know, sorry to interrupt you, but if you were listening to the show earlier and you maybe have just joined in, that's exactly what Judy Shelton, who's a monetary expert, was suggesting, a gold-backed treasury bond that people would buy. It would be protected from inflation, and then we would have a lower interest rate on those because it was protected. But that is a great idea, sir. I really like it.
Is to monetize our natural resources. The oil, the minerals, the land, the water, and the timber, with the leasing rights and the royalty payments. We need to connect American bonds to an actual capital asset that you're buying a piece of. And,
all right. It's a great call. Thank you for calling in. You're echoing exactly what Judy Shelton told us earlier on the show. So I'm glad great minds think alike. Do we have time for one more quick one, Mr. Producer, before we go back to the pains? Okay, from Vermont. What have you got for us?
Hi, this is Steve from Vermont. I don't know if you're familiar with this economist named Martin L. Gross, but back in 1992, he wrote a book called The Government Racket, Washington.
Oh, yes, I am familiar with that. I am, yes.
Great book. One of the chapters, he talked about zero-based budgeting.
Yes.
The way that we budget now is we go off of the previous year's budget for agencies and bureaus, and he proposed, instead of doing that, going down to zero and facing the next year's budget.
Yeah, it's a great call, sir. Thank you. And I got to cut you off because we're up against a hard break. Yes, I love that idea. Every agency should have to justify its spending every year. They don't have to do that, folks. All that happens is if they gave them $100 million last year, we just give them $100 million plus 10% each year. And that's why government grows and grows and grows. We don't look at whether these programs are effective or not. That's not the way it works in the private sector. Folks, I've had a lot of fun with you today. I really appreciate all my callers. We'll be back next week. And the winner, according to the tally of my producer, was Grandma Got Run Over by a Reindeer, is the least favorite song of our listeners in the Christmas season. My favorite song is Oh Holy Night, but I really love that John Lennon song. I really do. I think that's one of the classics that is So This Is Christmas, and I love listening to that one.